Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to be able to be here today with you and to share with you some of the insights that I've gained over the course of my long years of study into money and finance. I've had a long-standing interest in Islamic banking and finance because I too am passionate about social justice and economic equity. And it seems that all the religious faiths today, only some elements within Islam are seriously examining the structural flaws that need to be corrected. When I began my in-depth study many years ago, I quickly came to realize the central role played by the practice of usury in creating strife and perpetuating exploitation around the world. It's not petty lending at interest that causes such misery, for this might be accepted and understood as compensation for loss. The original distinction between interest and usury was just that. Interest was compensation for loss. Usury was a charge for use of anything. And who can argue that today the national currencies that predominate around the world are all losing value over time because they are all badly abused? Today's dollar, for example, is worth but a fraction of its value just a few decades ago. The preservation of capital, therefore, requires a rate of return sufficient to offset that inflationary loss. That is not to say that I advocate a perpetuation of debt financing. My preference is for a general shift toward temporary equity financing that shares both the rewards and the risks involved in any venture. The truly devastating thing about the dominant monetary system is that usury has been built into its very foundation. And this results in a debt imperative and a growth imperative. And these dual imperatives create a Hobbesian war of all against all, as those who are in debt to the banks vie with one another in the market to try to capture enough money to avoid going bankrupt, and in order to be able to pay their loans and to be able to pay the interest that's required on those loans. This not only causes gross inequities and social strife, but it also drives the destruction of our physical environment. This fundamental flaw in the monetary system causes far-reaching imbalances at all levels, including international trade. In his 2001 speech at the 20th Al-Baraka Symposium for Islamic Economics, Dr. Mahitar bin Mohammed spoke about actions that were then being taken to address these problems. Through the formation of an Islamic trading bloc, beginning with bilateral payment agreements, and he mentioned the prospect of extending such agreements so that trade between more than two countries could be settled in the same way. I was encouraged to see such steps being taken because they seem to fit well with my own vision of what is needed. And what Dr. Mahitar had to say this morning further reinforced that view, and I was further encouraged that he acknowledged the need for credit instruments to be involved in the clearing process. The difficulties of achieving such multilateral cooperation can be transcended through a process called credit clearing. And this process can be applied at all economic levels, from the interactions among private individuals and businesses up to those of nation states. It's a matter of fact that money allows us to transcend the limitations of barter trade. I submit that credit clearing allows us to further transcend the limitations of money. It is the explanation of that process and its requirements that I wish to share with you today. I will also suggest how a process of implementation might move forward in stages that include the organization of a multilateral payment system and the adoption of an independent pricing unit like the gold denar. I believe that following such a course will create a powerful independent trading bloc which will enable efficient trading amongst its members without the use of dollars or euros or any other foreign managed currency, and will provide a model that will be quickly emulated by the rest of the world and move us toward a more just and harmonious system of exchange and international trade. I was interested to hear the remarks of Dr. Umar Vadil just a moment ago, and I think as I go through my presentation, you'll see that what I am proposing is fully consistent with both what he had to say and with what Dr. Mahitar had to say this morning. I'll try to run through these slides very quickly because I don't have a lot of time. What I want to cover here consists of these 5 essential points. Number 1, the fundamentals of exchange, that is, the necessary functions of money. Secondly, the stages of evolution through which money has transitioned. Thirdly, the abuses of money that are enabled by the centralized control of credit. Fourth, the decentralized credit clearing process and how we can create an honest and efficient system of exchange based on that. And fifth, escaping dollar dominance, a multi-stage plan. Now, to begin with, we have to understand that exchange requires 3 essential elements: a marketplace, a measure of value, and a means of payment. A marketplace is where buyers and sellers come together. And ideally, it should be an open marketplace where anyone has access, as Dr. Vadil mentioned. We need a measure of value. We need some way to express prices of things, some common unit of value. And thirdly, we need a means of payment for concluding a transaction. We also need to distinguish different kinds of economic interaction. There's often a lot of confusion that results because people do not make the distinction. First of all, we have gifts. This is a transfer of value from one person to another without any particular expectation of anything in return. Secondly, we have involuntary transfers, theft, robbery, extortion, taxes, and the hidden tax of inflation that Dr. Vadil mentioned. And third, we have reciprocal exchange. This is the exchange where 2 parties to the exchange expect to get equal value. And in fact, they expect to get more than they give up, because value is a subjective thing. When I have a surplus of apples and you have a surplus of shoes, and I trade my apples for your shoes, I'm getting more than I gave up. And when you trade your shoes for my apples because you have a surplus of shoes, you also are getting more than you gave up. That's the whole impetus behind trade. So it's within this reciprocal exchange realm that money plays its role. Now, we all learn in Economics 101 that money has certain basic functions. It's a medium of exchange, it's a measure of value, and it's a savings medium. Now, these are functions. This doesn't really tell us the essence of money, what money really is. Now, these 3 things can be combined into one when we're talking about commodity money. But modern money is not commodity money. It's credit. So these things must be achieved by other means. And when you think about it, if money wants to be a medium of exchange, it wants to be spent. If money should be a medium for savings, it wants to be held. And these 2 things conflict with one another. So how to transcend that conflict? Looking back over time, we can see that many commodities in the past have served as money. In the American colonies, tobacco, hides, and other things were used as money in addition to gold and silver. Then later on we had symbolic money, which was basically a warehouse receipt. You would deposit your gold with a bank, get a paper receipt, which was redeemable back for gold. So the paper was simply symbolic of gold on deposit. Later on, we had a development of a different kind of money, credit money, which monetized the value of assets other than gold and silver or commodities. So bank credit, central bank notes, private credit, and notes, these all qualify as credit money. And the highest stage in the evolution of development of reciprocal exchange is direct credit clearing between buyers and sellers, which is a transition beyond political money and the monopoly that predominates. So why do we need to reinvent money? I have a website called reinventingmoney.com, and people often ask, well, why does money need to be reinvented? This has been thoroughly discussed and examined by a lot of different people. But the point is that throughout the world, money has become an instrument of political power. Money and banking are manipulated by and for limited private interests, and political money is exploitative, dysfunctional, and undemocratic. How is political money dysfunctional and exploitative? Well, money is created as bank loans.